Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Cat B Making Connections Possible. Today, I've got the lovely Janie Cox. Janie, tell everybody about yourself. Whereabouts are you? I know I'm in the UK. You're in the USA, I presume, but tell everybody whereabouts you're based and kind of what your story is and what's happened to you.
I live in Northern Virginia, Fredericksburg, Virginia. We've moved all over the place. My husband's a retired military guy, so we've kind of landed here now at this point. So I guess the journey began for me when my son passed by suicide a little more than 3 years ago. And like every mom, I just wanted to know, where is he? Where is he? Is he okay? And it was a difficult journey for me because I'm very logical thinking, very mathematical, and the spiritual world didn't really exist for me. So it's been a little bit of a journey to figure out, this is so foreign to me, and to start accepting some things. I think he made sure that I had really some hardcore proof, because he knew that's what it was going to take for me to even start down this path.
Let's start with that. Tell me a little bit about Anthony, your son. Tell me about the story before he transitions. What was his life like? What kind of character and personality was he, Janie?
Okay. So Tony was, you've experienced his sense of humor at times when you've brought him through in readings. He had a very funny sense of humor. He struggled from the age of about 16 with depression. And then as he got older, he kind of actually fell into some issues with drinking, which just made the depression even worse. Got sober and then would not, he would relapse. It was kind of a back and forth thing for a little while. And then he had gotten sober for a little more than a year, was doing really well, got into a relationship that didn't end very well, and he relapsed and just beat himself up over it. Just could not forgive himself for the relapse, and he ended up taking his life. So what's interesting though, even though I didn't believe in this journey, at the age of 16, I told 2 or 3 people that I knew I was going to outlive him, and I knew how he was going to pass. And it is exactly what happened.
Oh, wow. So you had some insight. And was Tony as analytical like you? Did he have a similar personality in terms of, because you're a very left brain, rational person, you love mathematics. Was he similar to you,
No,
Jane?
no, he was very much, I mean, I used to call him scary smart, super, super smart. He had a degree in American history. He was accepted into, I can't even tell you how many different law schools, full scholarships. He did it for a bit, for a couple semesters, and decided law was not for him. But no, he was very much excellent writer. I mean, all the things that I'm not, but he was terrible at math. So yeah, we have very different, I guess, brain waves as far as like what we are good at. So I'm not good at writing. And at one point when I went into college, I thought I wanted to major in psychology, and that was too gray for me. I needed black and white. So I popped over to math and computer science.
You like maths because it's a yes or no answer.
It's a definite, yeah, it's a black and white thing, you get the answers. Yeah, it was much more up my alley. So, no, he was very, I mean, really, really smart, but he didn't necessarily, he didn't think as highly of himself as he could have, for sure.
So he's struggled with self-esteem. So you've come from this very black and white place, and then suddenly you're thrown into grey areas, Janie. It's fair to say you're a very loving mum who adores your son, but you haven't been able to prevent the situation from happening. And even with the red flags, we see time and time again that somehow some of these children just fall through the gap, don't they? And it's really difficult because then it's very grueling on the parent. You go through lots of different experience in terms of anger, analyzing yourself, shame, guilt, all these things, blame. Did I miss something? Have I, you know, should I have been there? Should I have done this? Should I have? But quite frequently, what we find is that everybody did everything when the one day that they're preoccupied with something else, the unimaginable happens. Where were you? Like Janie sort of explained the kind of how it was for you, and kind of sort of share with people kind of how did you go from this kind of black and white into this grey, and then come out to find or clarify how you were going to manage it?
My story's a little different than a lot of moms and dads that I know who have experienced the loss of child by suicide. Like I said, Tony passed at 31. At age of 16, I knew this. I just knew this was how he was going to pass. And so I did a lot to try to help, to intercede. And he gave me a lot at the end so that I didn't have to go, oh, I wish I'd done this, or oh, I wish I'd done that. He gave me many times that I did everything I could do, and I knew I had done everything I could do. I won't go into some of the crazy things that happened, but I did. I know, I called the crisis center. I called the police. I did everything I could knowing that this was going to happen. And in Virginia, there was no, in Florida, there's something where you can like kind of have them committed for 72 hours if you feel like they're a harm to themselves. We don't have that here in Virginia. So I didn't have that ability. He lived on his own. He had his own apartment. Maybe part of my journey after he transitioned was like, how did I know that? How did I know he was going to pass not only by suicide, but in the manner in which he did? I knew it. I voiced it to my therapist. I voiced it to a couple friends. So maybe I had a little bit of something there, but I didn't actually really acknowledge that. So I was seeing a therapist at the time. I went and saw her. I told her what had happened. And she has a spiritual belief. She actually handed me the book Signs by Laura Lynn Jackson. I had told her that I had spent one night in the bedroom and I'd seen 3 orange lights flash in my window. And I got up and went to the window and there was nothing out there. And a few nights later,
Did that scare you, Janie?
it didn't scare me. My logical brain went looking through the electrical outlets on that wall, like where could, and so, but then it happened again 3 or 4 nights later that I made it to the window just after the last flash and there was nothing out there. I mean, nothing. So my therapist gave me that book, Signs. And so I started thinking, well, I guess that's a possibility. Maybe, but I got to have something else. That could have been, what? The car could have sped away really quick after they had their blinker on or something. I knew my logical brain knew that hadn't happened because I knew how quickly I got to the window. So I started reading the book Signs. In the process, my therapist said, I know somebody who's lost 2 children that's part of a group. I'm going to find her contact information and get it to you. Like, okay. So in the meantime, I'm reading Signs. I get a call from a friend I haven't spoken to in 20 years. I tell her kind of what's going on. I said, I've decided when I get done with this book, the sign I'm going to ask for is I want Tony to send me a corgi. He always wanted a corgi dog. Not everybody has one. You don't see them every day. So if he sends me a corgi, then, then maybe I'll believe this. And so the girl I'm talking to says, I said, I don't even know anybody that has a corgi. She says, yes, you do. I have one. And I'm
Oh,
like, yeah. And I just got cold chills again. And I was like, you have a corgi. So she sent me a picture of her corgi. And then the next thing she said was, I have a friend who lives in Virginia who's lost 2 children. Her name's Kathy. Well, that happens to be the same person my therapist was trying to find the name for.
wow.
So there was some stuff going
Oh,
on.
look at that. So they're directing you to a specific person, Janie.
Well, not just that, like in order for my therapist to find Kathy's name, she was trying to get the information correct to me so I didn't go on a wild goose chase. She ends up getting a friend request on Facebook from Kathy the next day that she tells me I'm going to. And in speaking to Kathy afterwards, Kathy said, yeah, I thought it was odd. She came up as somebody that you might want to be friends with. And she said, I could have sworn we were already friends. And my therapist said the same thing. I could have sworn we were already friends. But she sent me that friend request and said, this is the person I want you to talk to. So I think Tony very actively behind the scenes was,
Directed you. Directed you.
for
Very
sure.
I find it fascinating that 2 very separate people directed you, and we see that time and time again, Janie. And so it's just a very comforting thing when you finally meet her. You're already feeling a little bit more either intrigued or kind of reassured or kind of there's something very positive about this person. I'm being directed to them. And of course, anybody that does meet Kathy, she is a really lovely soul and very kind-hearted person. And so, of course, she's got this fantastic energy, but also 2 boys in spirit, and she understands exactly what you're going through on many, many different levels. Wow, Janie, what happens next?
So I do get in touch with Kathy, and I knew nothing about Helping Parents Heal, I knew nothing about it. I attended everything was by Zoom then. I went to our local meeting and it was interesting, but I was still just kind of like, okay, this is a little woo-woo. This is just, some of the things people said, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe, maybe not. But then when I kind of started looking at the synchronicities that got me to Kathy, and then my next door neighbor and her husband and two of their friends were going to go to a local medium. They had invited me to go, and I told them I wasn't ready for that. It was early on. And, you read all kinds of things about, suicide and whether they actually transition, right? Whether they go over. So I was not prepared to deal with him not coming through or him coming through in less than anything positive. So she came back from that reading and she said, I need you to come over. I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. And she said, Tony came through in Ben's reading. Ben doesn't know us. Tony not only came through in Ben's reading, he came through with his name, Tony Cox, so that the medium said, I have somebody here named Tony Cox. And then he said, his mother, Janie, is struggling so. Ben happened to record this. So I heard that and I thought, how do you dispute that? You could have Googled Ben all day and never come up with our names. He didn't, when he said Tony Cox, he didn't know who he was talking about. He had to go further to say, I believe this person took their life. And then it dawned on him, my friend's neighbor has a son and his name is Tony. He didn't know her last name was Cox. So it was, how do
Wow.
you not?
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
It was. So then that just kind of started me down,
So
started me down that path.
100% wanted you on the spiritual journey and connected to mediums. Wow.
And I think Tony knew he had to go through somebody that had no connection to me, because otherwise, like if it had been my neighbor who went to the service and everything, who knew Tony, I would have thought, well, maybe, I don't know how they could have, but you would have just, I would have tried to, make it a little more logical. Like, well, they could have figured that one out, even though this medium's an 80-year-old man that, would have never done all of that for, a reading. Yeah, he made it very predominant in many ways that it was coming from him. There was no other way some of this information came other than from him. So it got me thinking, and then I found you. And I don't know if you remember the very first thing I went to. It was a Saturday around Christmas time. You were doing a workshop, and I didn't know we were going to read for people. and I was a nervous wreck. And I know you'll remember this part. I told you as I read for people, I wrote things off and I would check a tick mark and then the mathematician in me figured out my percentage of how often I was right, so that at a later time I told you what that was. But that helps with trusting my connection with Tony, with trusting that what I'm hearing is actually from him. I don't think I've told you this. I play a very interesting game with him every now and then. I tell him, I've done it mostly when I've gone to visit his brother. I'll say, tell me something Alex is going to tell me that I don't already know. And then just something just drops into my head. Like one time what dropped into my head was hit by a ball. And I'm like, hit by a ball? Yeah, you make a face too. I was like, okay. So we go to dinner with Alex and his wife that night, and he's an athletic trainer. He's working though with the wrestling team. And he says, oh, Mom, today I had to sub with the baseball team. The umpire got hit by a ball in the head and I had to do medical attention to him.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. I mean,
Do you write them all down, Janie?
I do. I have a journal of every,
I bet you read back and then you tick.
Well, I will tell you, every time that I've asked Tony to tell me something that Alex is going to tell me, he's batting 1,000. It's never not happened. Never.
Wow.
I mean, it could, one of these times it could, but I've done it 5 or 6 times, and every single time it's happened.
Amazing. For the viewers listening, how long did it take you to get that level of clarity?
I actually had the level of clarity right away. I just didn't trust it.
Okay. So how long did it take you to trust it? That's a good question. I know that you still don't trust always, even though your connection is excellent. Go on, share with everybody. Till the point where you were starting to think, okay, the penny's dropping. How long would you estimate from Anthony's transition to the point where you were like, okay, there's something genuinely going on here?
I think I wanted it so badly that I started to believe it pretty soon within the first year, pretty soon within that time that I wanted to know that he was okay and that he
Wanting it badly doesn't count for me though, Janie. At what point is the point where you were like, I 100% believe this is genuine?
wow. That's a tough question, Kat.
I've got a theory in my head, but let's see if it's the same.
Probably when I decided to start your circle, when I decided to start really kind of pursuing it, that I would have never done that had I not believed that there really was something there. What was your thought? You tell me, you may be right.
I had about a year to year and a half. I thought a year and a half was the point that you started to really genuinely believe. I think at a year you were teetering. By a year and a half, you were convinced that there was something genuinely happening. Would you
I think
agree?
you're probably right. I'd have to go back through my journal of because I keep a journal for signs and visits, and so I'd have to kind of go through back through that. But I believe you're probably about right because I think the workshop I did with you, I was just a little over a year. And then I fairly soon after that started your circle. But that to me, to get things right for other people was
You
like,
did amazing. That's what I want to sort of say to people. You don't have to have any experience. People come in to a workshop and they experience things immediately because the power of the collective energy helps bring that vibration to a higher level. Obviously, I'm there, I'm more experienced. I can support and guide as well and pull things through. But it's so exciting, isn't it, when we all start to connect and we start to realize that with awe and kind of wonder, wow, these things are real and we can all experience them. And there's something really beautiful there. And I remember distinctly, in fact, I've never had a Christmas group. I really only do this workshop twice a year. And I'll be honest, I've never had anybody that's not been able to connect, Janie. It's always been a phenomenal group. And I know the group that you were in was beautiful. And
was
the evidence and the information that we were getting was really fabulous. So yeah, so we go on this journey. How's your logical mind doing at this point? Is it fighting everything? Is it like ready to have a punch up? It must be really difficult, really difficult.
it was I mean, and it still at times is a battle, but it is still sometimes I think, well, that was just coincidence, or well, that was, but then you start, I do almost like a spreadsheet of coincidences. And so as you start seeing these coincidences,
I
they're
love
coming.
I love the fact you've got your journal, you've got your spreadsheet, you're marking yourself out of 10. No grey areas for Janie. It's either 10 out of 10 or it's not good enough. I love it. You do
I
put your
take pictures of the things that I know are signs. Like if I'm able to take a picture, I take a picture of it. I have that in a journal. So I have all the little pictures in there as well. So yeah, I just,
joking aside, that's fantastically healing. And often I find that when you do look back, and I think that's a good tip for anybody that's listening, if you do document it and you look back every 3 weeks, or you can see the progression, but you can also understand the relevance of why the sign came up. Because often the sign isn't just a validation, it is a pointer to something else to learn or observe or to understand. And so it becomes a language, doesn't it? It becomes, I call it the language of love. It becomes a language that we start to understand. And that can really lead, and it starts with, I think, with small little leaps, and then eventually they become bigger as we gain confidence. We don't go into it blindly. We don't make stupid mistakes and kind of put all our money on the lottery, gamble
right.
everything, thinking it's going to operate. We watch for the evidence, and then as the evidence comes, it starts to reassure and trigger sort of themes, doesn't it, in a way. So I love it that you've got this spreadsheet. I love that you've got the journal. I love that you put so much pressure on your shoulders that you are a perfectionist. It's fair to say
Oh,
that
huge.
a perfectionist. But in a way, that's been a saving grace for you as well, because having that level of detail has made you really analyze this connection, really challenge it.
Well, I challenged it. I've challenged it in some huge ways too. I mean, it's just, but I would sit sometimes and I would think, well, what's it going to hurt to believe that this is real? But my logical brain's like, well, you don't want to believe something that's not real. That's stupid. You don't want to believe, why do that to yourself? So this little internal battle was going on inside. Well, it makes me feel good to think that he's there and to think that like I'm communicating with him. But then my logical brain's like, but what if it's not real? Then you're faking it. You know,
Disillusioning yourself.
yeah, it's just an illusion and it's not real. So what good is that? So yeah, I went back and forth. That's why I wrote everything down to keep going back to like some things. Okay, let's be honest. We all know some signs can be a coincidence. Some signs can be, but then there's other signs that you're just like him dropping in my head, hit by a ball. I mean, I didn't dream that
So
up.
it's so specific, isn't it?
Yeah. And I
Like,
mean,
you didn't have to ask Alex for the information. It just fell
no.
into your lap as
Well,
well.
that's my test on me too. I don't ask. So when Tony drops something in my head that Alex is going to tell me, I don't ask. I want to wait and see if it's going to come up naturally. And every single time it has.
And if anybody's listening and they wanted to play this game themselves, it doesn't have to be a sibling to the person that's transitioned. It
Mhm.
could be your partner, it could be your best friend, it could be a work colleague, it could be a mentor. It doesn't matter if you've got somebody, or it might even just be somebody from the support circle. I know that you've formed some really strong friendships with
Mm.
people that you've met along the way, and you're able to work across or within the circle as well. We've got a messenger group. People are able to connect up and talk to one another about the signs and synchronicities they're getting for each other. And I mean, that's a beautiful thing in itself, because you're getting the pick me up of the message from your loved one, as well as the validations that you're picking up for yourself. But it is kind of beautifully simple, but very, very effective. And we can also do that with our guides and helpers and just ask them for information and keep a journal for ourselves. Otherwise, it's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because otherwise, if you don't write it down, you kind of go stir crazy with this kind of doubt. And once you've got the validations and the evidence, I love how you take the photographs of the signs and you record everything, because it shows a picture. And I guess after how many months of journaling was it when you were, so would you say sort of 6 months of it, you were absolutely 100% had enough evidence to support your analytical mind, Janie?
It probably took a year. Probably not. It probably took a year.
I should say that every class that I ever do with Janie, she'll always say to me, I don't trust what I'm getting, but this is what I've got. I'm going to give it. I'm going to do as I'm like instructed to do, but I'm really not sure. And then the most amazing evidence comes out. And it's not like it's a red cardinal. It's you will give detailed information that is very specific, and the person is able to validate. And I think last week you did really well. You got the initial of the name of the person that you were reading for. You got detail about what their personality was like, evidence of what they did in their life, and you were able to give an example and a story about that, which made somebody's day. It lifted. Another member of the circle was absolutely over the moon with the evidence that you gave. So you can be very specific. It can be dates, it can be locations, it could be a really amazing story that only they shared. All of these things have come through in the evidence that you've brought through, Janie. It's been really, really impressive. So I think you were with me. I think the first year or first 3 terms of kind of working with you, I think I would say you went from a novice to a completely competent person. And now you're just excellent every time. And it's getting stronger and stronger, and the evidence is getting stronger. We're getting names, we're getting locations, we're getting details, we're getting dates. So I'd say it's taken a year to build up the confidence and the level of competency. Do you think that's fair, Janie? To sort of say, look, I'm really capable now of bringing through the message, the story, and getting evidence that will support that this is not a fluke. Would you agree?
To a point. Would I ever say I'm competent at always getting
Oh,
it? No, I wouldn't say. And I will say this is just the logical brain in me. I also think, okay, so is the person I'm reading for just kind of being nice and
yeah,
and
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's in there all the time, like, they don't wanna tell me no, So, it and I'm sure there's a little bit of that thrown in for sure, because nobody wants to make anybody feel bad, but then, yes, I know there are little nuggets that come up that people are like, "Oh, wow, I don't know how you got that. I will tell you, I've gone one time in person to a, I guess like a conference. It was one of Suzanne Giesman's in-person things. And I wasn't aware we were going to do readings for people, and we did. And the bejesus was scared out of me. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to sit here for a total stranger. And we had 7 minutes and we just had to spew it out. They couldn't tell us yes or no. And it was just, but they were writing as we did it. And I think it had to do with the energy in the room, the vibration. I mean, it left that going, what just happened? What? And this was after I'd done your classes. So this was, I didn't even tell you, my friend and I, we went, I think it was February of 2024. And I just left there like, okay, were they just being nice? Were they just, but some of the things that I got were just so spot on for some people that,
I think when it's a complete stranger as well, you see, in the group, what's lovely is there's a level of comfort because we get to know one another. But I think there's always stuff for the people that we know that we can get that is unique and that we don't know about them. But I do think there's something about when you serve a stranger, the power of that validation is even more powerful because there's absolutely no way on this earth. I still remember the first time I ever, I was directed to spirit in a very interesting way. As you know, I had a diving accident and then I started having experiences. And it was actually the spirit wall that directed me to a very specific medium. And I was a little bit like you in that I was only willing to see the best medium. So I was like, when is your best medium going to be here? And they said, this gentleman lives in Cornwall. He'll be here in 4 weeks. I want the appointment with that gentleman. And I was going to settle for the first time. I wanted evidence. So I made 2 bookings with the 2 best mediums in order to see what, and I never said anything, Janie. I never gave them anything, no information about me. I even dressed differently to how I would normally dress in order to see what would happen. And what happened really blew my socks off. The first gentleman, I went in with postcards in a handbag, Janie. This is how specific I wanted spirit to be. And I said to them, you have to mention those postcards. If this is real, you have to mention the postcards. I sat down on the seat and he said, have you got the black and white postcards? And I was like, sorry? And he said, can I have the one with the bridge on it? I said, the one with the bridge on it. He said, yeah, your grandma's here. She wants me to talk about the one with the bridge. Now, the whole story about this bridge was fantastic because not only did I have it on the postcard, not only was there a story about the bridge, but my grandma had actually done an embroidery of this bridge. And then my sister had copied the embroidery. And then she had created a cushion that she'd given to me. So
oh, wow.
in this layer was stitched in, like that embroidery, so many levels of detail, and he got every single one. And it was mind blowing. But the spirit world said to him, I'm not allowed to tell you everything. I can tell you this much, but you have to go see this gentleman. I said, oh, well, that's good because I've already booked an appointment to see him. And he told me the rest. And he said to me, you're going to be one of the youngest mediums ever. He said, I'm a bit jealous. So you're going to be a really successful medium and you're going to be one of the youngest mediums in this country. And I must have looked younger than I was at the time, Janie, because I was laughing at him that I was already sort of, in my eyes, kind of middle-aged. I was only in my early 30s, but he clearly thought I was in my early 20s, bless him. And, there in my hoodie and my sweats.
Yeah, because you weren't dressed like you normally would.
I'm trying to be the sporty one or throw him off the scent. And, and it's really fascinating. And I never wanted to be a medium. And so the irony that what he would then later share with me transpired to be true is kind of really sort of the art of the impossible, really, because I had always wanted to be a head of buying, became a head of buying. I had no desire to leave. And yet here he was sharing with me that I would become a medium, which I later did become. So sometimes these little amazing experiences, they're astoundingly real, aren't they? They're astoundingly real. And they defy logic. And there is no way he can give me the coincidence of those black and white postcards. I mean, how many people go with black and white postcards and the specifics of detailing what was on the card? I mean, it was just too incredible, Janie. It was too
You knew something. You knew there was something. You knew there was something to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the names that he gave me 3 names and he said these names won't make sense to you for many years. And they were the 3 names of the people that actually supported, certified me, and
Okay.
began my career as a medium. And so I find it, even today, I'm like, gasp that those three names are the exact three names. So I can't make it up. I can't. I've, I have explored this through thick and thin. I've tried everything. I've done trance. I've seen physical mediumship. I've explored everything. And I've checked out rooms, made sure there's no cameras, no projectors, like nobody's like faking it. The one thing that occurred to me, and I don't know if this occurred to you, Janie, but I was like, how have I got through 33 years of my life and never understood this phenomena existed? How have I got to this stage believing the world is black when it's actually white? You know, I had the black and white logical mind of you, and I was very analytical. I worked with spreadsheets as well, and I was very into, all my job was about trends and behaviors of trends and patterns, which serves me great now. But it was all about analyzing certain situations. And so, equally, I think having that analytical mind can be really helpful because there was no way I could question what I was getting because it was too accurate and it was beyond coincidences. So, when the things came that could be coincidences, it had me really thinking, Janie, because I was like, well, even if it is a coincidence, I'm not going to dismiss it. I'm going to write it down because there's something going on here that defies logic. And whatever this is, and I don't know about you in terms of fear, I was quite frightened at the beginning. I get the impression you had the right people around you, so you perhaps were guided a little bit more sensitively than I was, Janie. I was petrified. I couldn't understand how I was seeing things, hearing things, and nobody else was having the same experience as me, or so
I
I
think that
thought.
I think that would be scary. I think that would be scary for I wasn't seeing and hearing. I wasn't doing that. I think that would be quite scary. And I think as far as the analytical mind goes, I think when you put it to the test, when you do the spreadsheets and I think you come to a point that when you've now ruled out everything. This can't all be coincidence. This can't all be happenstance. There's something to this. So as you go through those steps, you then get to a point of knowing, that this is something other than like what we can, necessarily easily explain to other people. I think you just, when at that point, when you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned it last time, but there is a brilliant quote by Arthur Conan Doyle, and it says, when you eliminate all which is impossible, then whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. Arthur Conan Doyle, who was the author of Sherlock Holmes, but also one of the greatest spiritualist writers of the 19th century, partly because he lost a child and went in search
Mhm.
of the truth and found that there was this incredible world really that is so amazing to explore. And I don't think there's ever a dull day, is there, Janie? Once you experience it, it becomes slightly not obsessive, but it becomes a really integral part of your life. And you think to yourself, well, life is so fascinating with these experiences. How could I go back to who I was before? I see so many amazing things. I was saying to Samia last week, I was saying, I met the lady who saw her son in the clouds, and I was going to laugh it off. And then she sent me a photograph and I was like, oh my word, that is your son in the clouds. Or the woman, I was saying to Andy, the couple that sent me their son in the trees. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the truth. It sounds strange, isn't it? We capture these things on camera. I've seen videos. I've seen a video as well that was really incredible. That was a lady's son in the kitchen after he transitioned. He appeared on their CTV cameras,
Yeah.
and and just there in a light body, acting as if nothing's happened. I mean, these things, they're shocking, but once you start to see them from so many thousands of people, you start to realize that no, there's something else going on. And this is really tangible. There are real evidential elements there's an intelligence and a cleverness to what some of the children and the loved ones in spirit do to alert our awareness. And I think we've seen some magical moments like that. What's been your most magical, Jenny? What's been your most like the coincidence or the sign that you're like, wow, that's my moment?
Uh, there's been a
Your spreadsheet
I know if I had it in front of me, I could probably. The first Christmas after he transitioned was, of course, very difficult. But that day, I had a feeling um, that the phone was going to be significant. I'd had a reading with Suzanne Giesemann, and she had said he's going to play with the phone. And for some reason on Christmas Day, I thought it's going to be today. There's going to be something with the phone. And I thought it was going to be his phone. And we were going to my son's house for Christmas. And so I debated taking his phone, not taking his phone, and I didn't. But as we were leaving my son's house, I noticed I had a missed call, and the missed call on my phone said front gate. Well, I live in a gated community. It's a very antiquated gated community, the way it works for people to call you if they're at the front gate. In fact, it doesn't really work. The system doesn't really work. But I'm like, well, that's interesting. We had nobody coming through. Why would somebody have called me from the front gate? And then when we got home that night, I was laying in bed. I don't remember what book I was reading, but my phone rang again, and it was the front gate again. And I answered it, and there was no one there. So the fact that I knew it was going to be the phone, and then it was the phone, and it was Christmas Day, which was a difficult, difficult day, that was hard. That was one that was hard to write off, because it's not just that when somebody goes up to our front gate, if they're going to call me, they have to literally, it's this old digital system that they have to hit the down arrow to get to the name that they're looking for. So they have to go through the whole list of people to find the name.
Can't just be somebody that's ringing the first number on the list.
No. So then they have to put in a little 4-digit code, and that 4-digit code is what calls me. And then I get the phone call, and I can press 7 on my phone and let them in our gate. So it's not like it was accidental. My name's not the first one on the list.
Are
So
there cameras at the front desk area that you could check?
there's a gate, and there's this building. You don't even go into the building. It's like, imagine like, a payphone with the push buttons. So
Right.
there's just a down arrow. There's this little bitty screen. And so it only shows one name at a time. So you have to push the down arrow until you get to the name that you're looking for, and then look at the code, put the code in, and then it calls.
Wow.
I've
Wow.
never, ever had anybody call me. Like, we've lived here 5 years. No one's ever called me from the front gate, ever.
Wow. Wow.
So that was a pretty significant.
Well, phone calls are quite common. I remember going to see a lecture on it actually, and the parapsychologist who was speaking said that about 50%, it was as high as about 50% of people who lose a loved one have had experiences with phone technology. I know that when I had my awakening, it was really interesting. Part of the spirit world giving evidence to my husband was that they said, you know, the phone's going to ring. The phone will ring at 2:05, and there will be nobody there. Ask your husband to pick up the phone. So I said to my husband, at 2:05, the phone's going to ring. Michael says there'll be nobody there. It's only to give you evidence that I'm not going crazy. My husband thinks she's frigging crazy. 2:05 on the dot, Janie, on the dot. The phone rings. My husband goes over. There's nobody there. And I said, look at the clock. These little moments, they're real. I mean, that is evidential. He had an hour's notice.
Right,
I gave you an hour's notice.
right,
I'm not in charge of the phone. I'm not touching anything. I haven't, even if I knew how to wire the phone, I've been sat next to you the whole time. I can't possibly do anything.
right. And why would you? That's not the point of it anyway. So
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, incredible. That's incredible, isn't it? That's
yeah,
incredible.
that was early on. I mean, of course, in my head, I could still be like, well, maybe somebody accident, but then why weren't they there when I answered? Why? Because typically you answer the phone and they'll say, hey, this is whoever, buzz me in, but there was no one there.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was, but I will say the little games I played, like with tell me, like sometimes I'm like, tell me what color shirt your dad's going to put on today. And so it'll drop in my head. And then sure enough, my husband walks out with that color shirt on. So the little games I play like that um,
Really
help.
help.
Yeah, they do. I don't do it as much now as I used to.
I'm really intrigued. How does your husband take this? His perception of his left brain thinking wife suddenly doing a U-turn.
He's coming around. We were literally 2 nights ago,
Evidence. Have you been able to give him evidence?
he heard the reading where with our neighbor's friend, where the medium said Tony Cox, and he not only said his mom Janie, he said his dad Steve. He had the whole family, he gave it, yeah, it was a little crazy. So he heard that, which was intriguing to him. And then he's watched some of the readings that I've had, and he's been a little surprised at some of the things that have come out. He's supportive of what I'm pursuing. In fact, 2 nights ago, we were sitting there watching TV, and I thought, yeah, okay, Tony, give me a sign in this show. Tell me something that's gonna, and the word pigeon came into my head. And I'm like, pigeon? It wasn't 10 minutes later, and there wasn't a pigeon bird. A girl called herself a pigeon, and she called herself a pigeon 4 times in about 30 seconds. And I'm
Wow.
like, and I looked at my husband. I said, I just asked Tony to send me a sign, and the word he gave me was pigeon, and she just said it 4 times. He's like, man. I'm like, I know. I mean, it's like, so he's open to it. He's supportive. After every Monday after I have the mentorship and the circle, he'll ask me how things went. So
Oh,
he's
so
not
it's something really nice to share. It's become something of a conversation starter.
a bit. He doesn't have a lot to say because he doesn't know what to ask. So there's times it's a little awkward. So, and there's sometimes that I just don't, I'm just like, oh, it went okay. Because I just, he doesn't know exactly how to express the interest in it. So, but he lets me know that he's interested. So also along this journey, it's been very evident to me how very different men and women grieve. And it is definitely a challenge to navigate that together, and we're still navigating it, but it wasn't what I expected at all. But we've been married 41 years, so we'll get through this. But it's been a challenge
It's
to
very difficult.
it has.
People's emotions and energies are at different levels at different point. One person can be, starting to feel a bit better and brighter, and then the other person can feel really low, and that brings the other person down. Or perhaps one person's becoming very vocal and needs their grief witnessing, can talk about it, and the other person feels like they want to shut it down and they need to hide away. And so it is a juggling act, isn't it? What we've got to realize is that it's a passing time, a period of time, and that there are going to be changes. Nothing can go back to how it was before. And yet we can just be accepting of one another's journey being different and have the understanding that it's not going to stay this way forever, that it is going to change and transform and move. And it may move into different shapes a few times before
Right.
everything settles down. But yeah, it's a really interesting one, Janie. And there is no wrong or right answer, because so many relationships get very challenged through grief, especially the grief of a child. Some people find it brings them closer together. Some people um, find it makes no difference at all, and other people it destroys their marriage. So it there is no right or wrong. It really is different for every single person. But it is 100% difficult to navigate, and that's something that
It
I hope.
is. It's been challenging, I'm sure, for both of us. But I mean, it's just like you said, the word is different. It's different. He handles his grief differently than I handle mine. I mean, we both acknowledge, of course, that we love Tony, that we miss Tony, and so there's no doubt about the love and the missing, and it's just the way it's expressed. But we're working through it. It's just acknowledging and accepting that it's different for each of us, and accepting that we're each on a little bit different path to get to where I never dreamed I'd be on this path, that I'd be on like any type of spiritual path. But after I've kind of been on this, I've done some reading and read about soul planning and things like that. And there's so much of that now that just makes sense to me. It just kind of does. And Tony has come to me through some of my meditations and kind of explained to me why things have happened in the way that they have, and that it was an agreement that we both agreed to, that, he agreed to go to help get me on this path. And I agreed to be his mom to let him go because he was going to do what he needed to do before he didn't need to be here long to do what he wanted to accomplish. So it just makes a lot of sense. The whole soul planning thing just makes a lot of sense to me. And I was not raised that way at all. I was raised very traditional Christian, heaven and hell. And, this just makes more sense to me.
I have to be honest, I sat on the fence with it for ages. And even though I was a trained medium, by the time I started working internationally, I was still questioning it. And what I did was ask the spirit, well, give me proof, give me evidence. I'm not going to talk about something until you can show me that there is something tangible to talk about. And within minutes, Janie, they started sending the evidence through different readings. I'd be sat in a reading and they'd say, okay, today, all the people that you're going to read for, they're accidents, but they're all going to talk about hindsight things that they had illustrated to their parents prior to transitioning. The first girl had died in a car accident, and she was not a tidy person, but she rearranged the whole of her bedroom, 6 months, labeled everything, organized everything, wrote notes. This is where to find things to her parents. It was very unusual behavior, Janie. It was almost as if she was preempting that I'm leaving and I need you to know where everything is. Another gentleman was jogging. He had just had a child. They weren't married. They were living together very happily. He went out jogging. He did this every day. 3 weeks prior to the particular day that he transitioned of a heart attack on the jog, he rearranged the whole of the loft and again did the same thing, rearranged everything, almost like nesting, like you do
Mhm.
when having a baby. And, and the third boy was a car accident, and he told his parents how he was going to transition. He said, he was a very competent driver. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out in a car as a passenger. I'm going to go out sideways.
Huh.
3 weeks. And he said on a country road, I won't be the driver. And 3 weeks later, he went out as a passenger on a country road. He wasn't the driver. He was the only person that transitioned that day. So you have these moments and you think, how can that be? And so then you're like, gosh, this really did happen. I've had one girl tell me she told her parents the whole year what was going to happen to her, how it was going to happen, why it was going to happen. She even said that spirit were visiting her on a weekly basis to coach her. And I was like, this can't be. It is. And the parents validate it, and you think, wow, like that's
Think
kind of
until it happens to you like that, you just hearing about it's difficult to believe it. But I mean, how did I know Tony passed at 31? How did I know at 16 the manner
he
and method that he was gonna how did I know that? But I
and
did.
And though his problem started at 16, at that point, there was no mental health or addiction to the extent that there was at 31 that would indicate a passing of that nature. He hadn't been having any challenges with mental health, had he? He wasn't ill. He wasn't suffering from. So, yeah, that knowing, that inner knowing, I hear that a lot from people that are, especially parents that have lost children. I hear that quite a lot of, I just knew he was never going to get old, or she was never going to get old, or I just had a feeling about this situation. And, you can watch Dr. Mary O'Neill and her story as well, where she has the near death and she goes
Mhm.
over in Chile for half an hour and she gets told that her son's going to die at a specific age, and she does everything she can to try to eliminate that situation, and of course he does transition. So yeah, I think that the day of transition is set in stone, Janie, from what I can tell. I can't prove it, but from what I see in readings, I've had some incredible moments where I remember reading for a lady. I'd had two, 3 readings that day, fantastic readings. And about 5 minutes before this lady's reading, I got the worst, to the point where I was physically sick. That is so strange. I've been feeling absolutely fine. What is wrong with me? And I had to delay her reading, and I delayed it till the following Monday. But in that week, her mum, who had been completely fit, well, healthy, transitioned and was the first person through the following week. And I think to myself, there is no way that's a coincidence. I feel that that appointment was, I know it was, Janie, I know it was delayed in order to teach me about the art of the possible and how specific certain dates or times, or the understanding intelligence of the spirit world, knowing when the greatest need is going to be. Yeah, I think once you start to see this world on a daily basis and you see the incredible things that people experience. I think I've done over 7,000 readings, but whether that's paid or voluntary, I do large group readings, don't I?
Right.
So some are group readings. But I can honestly tell you that every day I learn a nugget of something. And I think, wow, wow, ordinary people have extraordinary experiences, but we just don't share them very often, Janie.
Well,
And the
because people sometimes people look at you like you're crazy, so you select who you say
thing you
things to
share
and
it
who
with.
you don't, because it's like some people are very condescending about it. Well, if that makes you feel better, and you want to go,
Yeah, they think they think it's a pity party.
yeah.
It's like, "Oh, I feel sorry for her. Look, she's having to go this way because she just can't get over."
She's having to believe that she's talking to her son, and yeah, it's like you can see the stories that they spin up in their head, and I may have been one of those people in the past, I don't know, I don't remember anybody telling me anything like this, but, um, I've always kinda had a little bit of an odd connection, like, where I had a cousin I was very, very close to. We were like sisters. And it came to me like in dreams. Like I knew that I had a dream that she was going to pass away. And the next day she went in the hospital for surgery, found out she had stage 4 cancer. Within a year she was gone. And I knew 2 or 3 nights before she was gone that she was, and so I flew home to spend a couple days with her before because I knew when it was going to happen. But it's kind of through my dreams, things like that have come to me where I just still remember it, which leads into a whole different story about astral travel and all of that. But I think there's something to all of that because how would I have known? I didn't
Or
know, you know.
I've had so many experiences like that, Jane. I remember sometimes when it's really crucial when spirit know that this person it might be the only opportunity that they're going to be placed in front of a medium, and they might not come. People that are left brain thinkers like yourself, that they need that factual evidence. I remember a friend of mine asked if I would read for her partner. She'd lived in another country for 25 years, hadn't seen him for ages. She got married, met a really lovely guy, had never met him before, and she said, I don't want you to meet him because I want you to read for him. And I don't want you to know anything about him other than the country that of origin that he's from, because you'll be able to tell by his accent. And I remember the pressure because she said it's really, really important. This reading's really, really important. And I remember the pressure and I thought, oh my gosh, this is like a best friend. Like what if this information isn't accurate enough for him? It's got to be specific. And I must have been worrying about it. So the spirit world woke me up half an hour prior to getting up my normal time in the morning. And they gave me the vision of what had happened. And it was something so incredibly horrific. It's horrific. 3 people had descended down through a roof in a robbery and with machetes and had murdered a family. And yet the father in spirit gave me such specific information, and I was able to relay that information and say, listen, I've had a really strange dream this morning. I know it's a lucid dream. I know it's in preparation for your reading. So I'm just going to share with you what I experienced. If it's wrong, just tell me that it's wrong. But I believe that this is part of the reading today. And it was 100% correct, Janie. It
Wow.
is really astounding. And I don't know that I get a good level of detail in readings, but I think when these lucid dream moments happen, or the astral moments that we're talking about, where it is so real in the dream. Honestly, in a lucid dream, your hairs can stand up and then you feel like you're there. I actually felt like I was watching it live from on a kind of video recording. And then evidentially this information is correct. I mean, it's so unusual. I don't think I've ever come across a robbery before where somebody's descended through the roof. You know, I say to people, don't take mediumship lightly. You're dealing with trauma every single day. You're transmuting somebody else's grief, and you're carrying some of that and transmuting it for them on occasions because they haven't got the energy to do it themselves. And so you have to be that light. And of course, we teach ourselves ways to protect ourselves and work, but there are still situations, maybe I get 1 or 2 a year that I'll give me a bit of a sleepless night, Janie, or give me a little bit of a, gosh, how did that, like, how is that person? And then I have to realize that it's very humbling. You have to kind of put yourself into that person's shoes and say, well, what a privilege that they've chosen to be here and to allow me to hear this story or to witness it, and not to judge anything, because sometimes holding space for somebody is the most important thing of all. Yeah, so I think it is a wonderful journey. What I read when you were talking about the pity party element, what I find really interesting about that statement is actually you're experiencing joy as a result of your connection. So people that are pitying us for like having these experiences. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? Because actually, these are the things that are lifting us and bringing us joy and making us able to survive these awful experiences. And so, if there is a healing element that transforms somebody's life, isn't that a great thing and something that we should celebrate?
For sure.
Mediumship gets such bad press. It gets such a hard time. And I'm not saying that there aren't occasions where, it's not for everybody, Janie. It certainly isn't. And there are times, even as, with the most experience that you can have, where you can't calibrate somebody's energy in front of you. And you have one of those moments where I'm really sorry, I can't read for you, or I can't. But better to be honest and just admit that that is life, that is normal. We're not perfect. We're aiming to be perfectionists, but yeah, we're genuinely human beings and normal people as well, and stuff happens. There are times where certain things are outside of your control, or maybe they're purposely out of your control because spirit want to redirect somebody somewhere else or get them a different level of information or a different experience. Yeah, I find it really fascinating, kind of people's perception from the outside of it looking in, because inside the situation, there's a lot of joy and healing happening. And that has got to be a good thing, does it not?
I mean, I don't know what I would have done had I not found Kathy and then, this spiritual journey that this has put me on. Would I still be here? I mean, I'd like to think so. I have a son and husband I love and that I would not do anything, but it's such heartache to and if people want to look at me and go, well, if that's what you wanna believe, well, okay, then I will say the journey, though, has definitely made me so less judgmental, I try to look at people and the path they're on and not judge, like, where they are because we all have our struggles that other people don't know about. It has changed me. It has, if this was what my soul plan was to go through this and be changed and be on a completely different path, and if that's what it was gonna take to get me on this path, I'm not gonna say it's worth it because I would, love to have my son back. I wouldn't wanna have him back sick again, though. He would have to be I'd have to God would have to tell me, "Oh, he's gonna come back, he's gonna be completely healthy." Otherwise, I know he's happy. I know he's doing
You
well
do,
over.
you don't want him to
Yeah,
suffer, you don't want him to struggle.
right, right. But,
Do you
yeah,
do you think it's made you a much more compassionate person, more compassionate, more patient, non-judgmental, like a more loving person? You were quite loving
yes.
before, Janie, but do you
Well,
think
it's
it
one thing it's really made me, and this is one of the things Tony told me through one of my meditations, is that I wanted to be less controlling. And, if you can't control whether your child lives or dies, what do you want to control? So I totally I don't try to control anything anymore. It's like, all I control is what I think, how I feel, what I do. I can't control anything else. And I really have given up even any desire to control anyone else or anything else. So, and along with that comes the compassion because you're not trying to control somebody to do something that you want them to do. You let them have their own space. You love them where they're at.
I think that's a really relevant point, isn't it? That the free will is the attitude that we take, and the fact that we commence the journey at a much earlier stage, perhaps, than we consider.
Right.
And so we definitely have the free will. You've made the soul plan decision with Tony, but maybe at a much earlier stage in your life before you actually came to Earth or had this physical experience. But you also have the free will in terms of the attitude that you adopt. And my impression from you is that you've adopted a very healthy, happy attitude that has brought with you a lot of growth and a lot of great stuff, as well as, the sadness and the sorrow that you've traveled through.
Yeah, I've learned the word "and," so I can be happy and be sad. I can grow and still grieve. So there's the word "and" that I didn't necessarily early on in this journey didn't. I'm still early enough on that I can't say that I experience joy right now. I still have my days, that are just very difficult days and my connection's very bad on those days. I can feel it. So, but I can also have days where my connection is good and where I feel a sense of closeness and connection. And that helps. It does. Like you said, it helps heal, it helps comfort. And that's really what we want. You know, we want to heal, we want to be comforted. As a parent, having gone through a child transitioning, we want to know they're okay. I mean, that's our, you know, as a mom, you know, we always wanted to know where are they and how are they, you know? So a child transitions and you're like, where are they? How are the two questions that you always wanted to know, you know, just makes your world spin out of control. So when you start to feel like you have an answer to those two questions, you can start to kind of calm within too. So it does cause a little bit of a calming within. It's been the journey, but it's been healing and comforting and helpful.
It's beautiful. Well, what a lovely place to end it, Janie. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Absolutely incredible. And I love that you've rebalanced your energies there, that you've got the masculine energy coming in of the logic and rational mind. But you're also adopting this feminine and balancing it out so that you've got this beautiful compassion and love and kind of glowing and a good sense of humor and lightness to you as well,
I'm
which
working
is
on it.
absolutely, absolutely. We all are. But it's been fabulous, Janie. Thank you
Thank,
so much for coming on and sharing your story with us.
thank you, Kat.